Good morning, and happy Aloha Friday from the farm. Welcome to another episode of Thinking Outside the Soil, where I get to talk story about topics related to the farmers and ranchers using hydroponic practices to grow the crops and creatures we need to eat. And I am your host, Shawnee Alfalfa Seed. Thank you for being with us on this beautiful morning. I recently got an aquaponic system set up in my office, so it's awesome. I can look over at any time and see some fish. I have some aloe and tomatoes planted in there, so that's really cool. I have to surround myself with plants pretty much all the time, and the sound of water is very soothing to me. Speaking of water and plants, I wanted to talk a bit more about that waterborne plant I spoke of the first time around in the ABCDs of fodder. So today's show will be a bit more about duckweed, and I will bring up the company in California that is revolutionizing how we are looking at this new plant here in the United States. I first heard about duckweed for livestock feed from the chairman of my board of trustees. Yeah, that's not as fancy as it sounds. All of us nonprofits have a way of being governed. But Ed and I are both taken back by the same thing. The article starts with this claim that when the guy brings duckweeds to the farm, the cows abandon the trough. It was funny because Ed immediately said, you ought to tell them farmers that they could use feed here. In fact, why don't you try to run their Colorado branch? I do know they are looking for an engineer to expand into other areas of California. So I have sent in the request and application and awaiting to see if they could use anyone like me. Perhaps that's some sort of reverse Californication if a Coloradan goes to California. But real quick, if you've liked what you've heard so far or want to hear anything else in the future, please follow the show and leave a rating and review. Leave me some words, give it some stars so others know why they should listen too. Now, that company that is doing duckweed is called Phyto. And Phyto, it's spelled F-Y-T-O, phyto.us if you want to look up that company. They are relatively new, and some of the news articles out there primarily come from their website. And the last articles that we have that they've published come from this summer. But I've also been able to find some articles about them on the platform LinkedIn, which is pretty neat. A lot of what they're doing right now is developing their model so that they can expand. I mentioned about the operations that they're expanding in California, and expansions generally suggest that a company has success. And if the cattle are running away from the trough as soon as the duckweed shows up, then it makes a lot of sense. Phyto is originally from MIT, and it got started in the mid 2010s after the founder spent some time in India and other areas of Southeast Asia. And what he saw while he was there, much like what I got to see when I read for research, was that farmers over there have been growing and feeding duckweed to livestock for centuries, if not millennium. It's commonly fed to chickens, to pigs, to ruminants like cattle, goats, sheep, and it's also extremely commonly fed to ducks. And I say that with a little bit of jokingly surprise, but that is where we get the name. And ducks are generally raised more in that area of the world than we do over in the United States. Ducks would originally forage the wild weed in lakes and ponds and stuff like that. People would see the ducks eating this weed and it got its name. And so that is how we generally grow duckweed. We take these lessons from Mother Nature and mimic them. So duckweed is commonly grown in that aquatic setting on different scales. And the way that Fido is growing this plant means that they do not need a field that requires tilling or a tractor to run on fossil fuels. And that's because they are essentially growing duckweed in a giant pond with a greenhouse over the top of it, and they have robotic automation that can harvest the floating plant. Because the duckweed is grown in a pond under a greenhouse and using automation, the plants grow far more quickly than any typical crops in the field, and it uses a lot less land. Fido is able to grow their crop year-round, and their crop actually doubles in size every 3 days on average. The founder of Fido has been quoted as saying, if you look at the rule of thumb for raising cattle, typically people allocate 1 to 2 acres per cow to grow on the farm with what will be required to have sufficient nutrition. Yet on 1 acre, we should be able to provide the protein for up to 60 cows. That space saving could mean that farms won't have to expand. So in areas like Brazil, where we grow a lot of soy to feed the cows, which is a leading cause of deforestation, duckweed could be a solution for areas where we're concerned about those types of farm expansion concerns. The biggest takeaway from duckweed is that the plants are so productive that the crop can compete in cost with any other animal feed. And it's showing to be likely the most promising feed for livestock as we look forward to solving some of the challenges that we have with drought and land availability. Though that is all I do have for you today on duckweed. And as always, I would love to read or hear your thoughts. So if you've enjoyed the show or want to know anything specifically, please leave me a comment, leave me a review, send me an email over at sean@thinkingoutsidethesoil.com. That's SEAN. I read and listen to everything that you guys put out there, so send those over. I want to be able to connect with you. If you want to learn more about how hydroponic fodder helps farmers save water, improve their livestock quality, and become better stewards, get a copy of my book at thinkingoutsidethesoil.com. All I need is your address, and when you take care of the shipping costs, I'll rush you a copy within a week. And thank you for being with us on another episode. Take care and have a lovely day. Hey, before you go, check out the links below. Leave me a rating and review and follow the show. don't forget to get yourself some of our Blooming Health blended sprouting mix. Our mix has been shown to get the best eggs and create the healthiest flocks. With feed costs going up, right now's the time to lock in a subscription so that you can get the best eggs without having to go to the grocery store or the feed store anymore. Check out the links below to get yourself some Blooming Health blended sprouting mix.